Imagine you took Hades, but removed the distinctive art style, the tight controls, the quality voice acting, and any sense of fun. That's pretty much how Osiris feels.
This is hurting.
Hey everybody, my name is Paul, I'm the Lost Scot, and welcome to my first look at Osiris by Processor Game Studio. It's an RDC where you play a demigod trying to fight his way out of the underworld. And if that sounds familiar, well, just you wait. Before we start, I just want to remind you that I almost exclusively cover indie games both here on YouTube and over on Twitch. So if you haven't already followed me there, I'll put a link to my channel in the description. But while we're here, please think about hitting that subscribe button like you're whipping the slaves building you a pyramid. No, wait. I can't say that. Hit that subscribe button like your body hitting the dusty desert sand? I don't know, that'll have to do. Let's get to the game. Okay, so this is a tough first look to write because Hades is so beloved across the board. I love it, reviewers loved it, other streamers and YouTubers loved it. It has character and it's light-hearted and it has this gameplay loop that keeps sucking you back in for another run. And Osiris is not really any of those things. I'm trying not to be too harsh right out of the gate because this only seems to be the developer's second ever game. Their first was an open world sci-fi shooter that I haven't played but looks pretty generic. And I feel like Osiris shares some of that aesthetic. It uses the Unreal Engine, so it doesn't look bad per se, but it is very generic. And considering how vibrant Hades looks, yes, I am going to keep referring back to that game through this whole video. This was always going to be a struggle for a game where the headline features are basically the same. And the thing about Ancient Egypt is that, if my 30 seconds of Googling is anything to go by, it was also bright and vibrant. If you look at Assassin's Creed Origins, there's colour everywhere. Strange Brigade, even one of my old favourites, City of Brass, has colour and personality. Now those might not be 100% historically accurate, but when you're dealing with a fantasy world full of magic, then who really cares? There could be oases and trees and canals bursting with life, and instead they went with this drab, grey-brown, dark dungeon look that's incredibly 2006. Even the lighting effects that Unreal comes with baked in can't really help it shine. Puns. When everything is so dark, it's almost monochrome. There are hints at colour dotted around the levels. Sunlight coming through the roof, fields of lava that radiate heat, torches and lanterns that glow with mystical energy. Even some of the ability and spell effects look pretty good, but those flashes of colour and light are way too scarce. Osiris has ray tracing support, so I want to touch on that for a second. I don't know why they bothered. It's glitchy as hell and somehow makes the game look worse. Even without RT enabled, my 3080 sits at 99% usage on the menu screen, so you can imagine what ray tracing does to performance when you're actually in game. But you don't want to use it in game anyway because, and I can't believe anyone let this happen, it actually hides enemy projectiles. I don't mind taking damage if I don't get out of a fireball's way, but I really have a problem when an invisible projectile does me dirty. I actually thought some of these artifacts were because of my GPU overheating, but my temps never got high enough for this kind of thing. And maybe they should consider it an achievement. It could be the only game that actually looks worse with ray tracing turned on. As a result, this video will have a couple of example clips, but for the most part will show almost no ray traced footage. So it looks bad, but how does it actually play? Well, imagine you took Hades, but removed the distinctive art style, the tight controls, the quality voice acting, and any sense of fun. That's pretty much how Osiris feels. Just like in that other classic myth-inspired game, you start in a kind of hub area that has weapons to choose from and upgrades available. But there are something like 5 different types of gems or currencies available, and I have absolutely no idea how to upgrade anything, and I don't even know how to get the items you need. This isn't helped by some of the icons looking too similar, even down to one particular instance where it still uses the default Unreal placeholder logo. Once you're in the game, the controls feel super sluggish, which isn't helped by the frame rate issues I mentioned before. But even with the detail levels turned down, it never feels quite right. Responses to button presses are slow. There's a general clunkiness to it where your character feels like he turns too slowly and never aims quite where you want him to. And then, when you get swarmed by enemies, it feels like the controls are hindering you just as much as the actual game mechanics. An action RPG needs to feel quick and responsive, a top-down one even more so. Now, while you could get away with a kind of Souls-like experience in this genre, they'd still need to make it feel like button presses were a lot more accurate. It feels like they were trying to walk the line between hack and slash and thoughtful, slow-paced combat, but ended up with something that's neither one thing nor the other and feels much worse because of it. There are a couple of features that, while not exactly original, I feel could and should be expanded. Just like that other Escape from the Underworld game, you run into characters when you clear rooms and they can bestow a blessing on you in the form of a weapon or ability mod. These could be pretty cool. I picked one up that triggered chain lightning on every hit, and I like that a lot. They come in standard rarity colours, green, blue, purple, etc. But the rarity alone doesn't seem to matter as much as just choosing which skill you want to buff. 99% of the time I'm choosing a plus 5% damage increase on my default attack, unless the effect on something else is huge. Just don't let those numbers fool you. That damage increase is so small, it'll still take the same number of hits to kill something, it's just that the enemy will have less health left for that final strike. They really need to buff the modifiers if they wanted to make these upgrades feel consequential. Right click is a secondary attack, and sometimes it's really effective. Sometimes it's just a bigger AoE, which has such a slow recovery time that you're probably just as well getting 3 regular attacks in instead. But then, sometimes it's like a big fireball thing that wrecks enemies. I just can't figure out what kind of timer or meter it's on. Sometimes I can use it 3 times in a row, and then other times it doesn't work for ages. The game suggests that there are other secondary skills available, and I'm pretty sure I've even chosen some before, but not a single one of them has stood out to me enough to mention. As you fight and complete rooms, you can choose which door you want to use to move on to the next encounter. Each one has a symbol that represents a god and, presumably, the reward at the end. And when you complete that encounter, you do get a reward, but I honestly couldn't even say if they're related to the door choice in any way. The colours are so meaningless, and the gods themselves have no shred of personality, so there's nothing to link them or get them to stick in my head. I'm struggling not to mention it again, but in Hades, damn it! Each god had a very distinct personality, and here there's nothing. There is allegedly some metagame content here, like most roguelikes, but I'll be damned if I can figure out how most of it works. Talking to the characters doesn't give you any new information, so there's absolutely no point in doing it after the first time. Even when they've got the standard "interact with me" sign, they have nothing new to say. Even when you give them gifts, because of course you can, they don't say anything new. There are about 5 different currencies on offer, but what does each one do? I've no idea. The only one I found a use for are the gems, which upgrade your default weapon, but the upgrades are so tiny that they hardly make any difference in game. I mean, I guess the one bit of good news is that none of the currencies seem to be tied to microtransactions, so there's that. And I know that plenty of roguelikes require a lot of playtime to unlock new content, but this felt like a grind after just the first couple of hours. But the pièce de résistance here is the voice acting.
May the gods have mercy on these poor souls.
At first I thought it was just very bad script reading because it does have a very boring monotone going on. I thought maybe the script was just dry. This is a small team, so maybe writing isn't their strength.
Ra, sun that shines on us, enlighten me with your protection.
But after playing for another couple of hours, I'm now sure that all the voices are AI. As an aspiring voice actor myself, I might just be overly sensitive to this stuff, but it's not the first time that either bad acting or bad AI voices have given me a terrible opinion of a game that I just can't shake.
The longer it stays irritating the dude convicts, the more difficulty it will have in its passage.
And that's probably all I can say about Osiris. Anything else I can add at this point isn't going to be useful, and I'm going to have to keep harking back to other games that have done things better. If you want a procedurally generated top-down hack and slash game, Hades is still your guy. If you want to feel like you're exploring a magical version of ancient Egypt, City of Brass is awesome. And if you want an action RPG with a cool story and way better voice acting, I will never not recommend Victor Vran. Doug Cockle, if you're watching this, then give your boy a shout. Why would he be watching this? That's ridiculous. And now onto the accessibility options. Is what I'd say if there were any. All the speech, if you can call it that, is subtitled. But that's about it. The font used for items and upgrade descriptions is really small, so if you struggle with sight, then you're going to have a bad time. But let's be honest here, the game doesn't even have an exit button on the main menu, and it takes Alt F4 to close it sometimes. So maybe we were hoping for too much. But isn't this stuff baked into Unreal these days? I thought it was, but I could be wrong. In conclusion, there's a delightful irony that in Egyptian mythology, Osiris has a protector named Nephthys. and she is commonly associated with disappointment. On the other hand, if you don't think this video was a disappointment, then please drop me a like. Hit dislike if you think I don't know if this is also associated with beer. And if you haven't already, please think about subscribing and hit that notification bell so you don't miss new stuff as it rolls out. Once again, I stream indie games like this on Twitch, well, hopefully better than this one. And I have new first look videos as often as I can. I'm the Lost Scott, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.